that I believe most people have. If we've done that, then that'll really help us. But if not, we are still going to learn either ways. So we are going to continue, but we are going to go a bit faster than we did the last time. And the the lessons are there for us to do at our own pace. So we are going to go a bit faster today. So sorry about that. Okay. Where do I share? Okay. So starting today, we are going to take the Python course. We are no longer looking at the introduction to programming. We are looking at the Python course. And from our last meeting, we looked at most of the stuff in here in the introduction to the Python course. But we are quickly going to go over this, everything here, and then we will see if we can continue the next chapter. Okay, so let's see. So let's forget about this. This is a simple Python code, and last time we were demonstrating some basic operations, arithmetic operation or mathematical operations, which includes addition, division, multiplication, subtraction. Yeah. So sorry. So these are some of the examples we are going to look at. We are quickly going to go through it, and then we are actually going to go through the lessons we are meant to do today. So there is going to be a refresher. So I'll start by creating a notebook where I'm no. Go back. So I'll create a notebook. Oh, I can create in a new tab. So I'll create a notebook. I'll open to the side, and then we work in that notebook. So I'll power it on. Yeah. So I don't need this. So let me just run it. Okay. Okay. So let's look at this code. Let's explain it and then we go ahead with it. So this here create a variable called spam amount. And when we call print spam amount, it prints the value of spam amount. Remember, there is the name of the variable, and then this is the data that is stored in the variable, or the data um, being held in the variable. Now in here, we do spam amount is equal to spam amount plus 4. That means we are incrementing or we are adding 4 to the existing value of spam amount, which is already 0. So the next thing we do here is that we check if the value of spam amount is greater than 0. If it is, then we print, but I do not want any spam. We move on to the next code block, and we say Viking song is equal to spam times spam amount. And you remember that we cannot do addition of a string and then a number, but we can do multiplication of a string and a number, which will result in the string being multiplied a number of times by that number. So we quickly run this code, and then we see spam amount here. This line here prints 0 because the value is 0. A bit too much. And this here adds 4 to the already existing value, which is 0. So we get 4. Now here, this statement says that if spam amount is greater than 0, print or show this, but I don't want any spam. So that get printed here. Don't worry, we'll come to this syntax later. And then here we multiply the value of spam by the spam amount, which is 4 times. So we are going to get spam, 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 right? So this is a basic explanation of the code. But uh, so let's go over here. So here is spam amount is equal to 0. So in here, we've created a variable called spam amount and assigned it to the value of 0 using the equal to sign, which is called the assignment operator. We talked about it last week. Okay, let me skip that. We don't declare spam amount before assigning to it. We don't need to tell Python what type of value spam amount is going to refer to. In fact, we can even go on and reassign spam amount to a different sort of thing like a string or a boolean. So what this is basically telling us from what we learned last week is that when you create a variable in Python, you don't need to specify the data type, like an integer, a boolean, a float, or a string, or any other data type. You just need to give it the name of the variable and then the value. Unlike other programming languages where you can create a variable and then leave it unassigned or leave it without giving it a value, Python does not allow that. So whichever variable we create, we assign a value to it. Okay, so we print the value of spam amount, that is the second line, and then we go ahead and then add 4 to the value of spam amount, which is already 0, so we get 4. Here we jump to a conditional statement. Conditional statement. This simply means that if something becomes true, this should happen. If it is false, another thing should happen. Or we did not declare a false statement, so it's just going to ignore that. So this simply means that if the spam amount is actually greater than 0, you should just print, I do not want any spam to the screen, which is shown here. And then we go ahead into the next block and say Viking song. So this is a new variable which holds the value spam, spam, spam. We can print the value of spam, 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 and then it gives this. Okay, so as I said, I won't talk much about conditionals until later. So let's see. So note that we indicated which code blocks belongs to if. I don't want any spam is only supposed to be printed if spam amount is positive. But the letter code, like print Viking song, should be executed no matter what. How do we know that? The colon at the end of the if line indicates a new code block is starting. Subsequent lines which are indented are part of the code block. So let me quickly explain one syntax of Python. In most programming languages, indentation or spaces doesn't really matter. In Python, it is a very important aspect of the syntax. If I do something like print hello world, I come to the next line, I put some spaces and type print. When we run this code, we get an error. And as we learned from the debugging we did last week, we know this is the message or the type of error we are facing. And this error simply means indentation error. Python works with indent. So as this part is saying, we use the colon to denote that we are beginning a new code block. So code block simply means a group of statements or code lines that are related. Okay, so if I take this line here, if this sperm amount is greater than 0, you see it is on the same line with Viking. But when you look at it, you see that print, but I do not want any spam. This is on a different index. Sorry, there's an indentation here. There's a space here. Okay, so this, or let's say all the codes above, beginning on this line, are one code block or different code blocks. Yes, these are different code blocks. And this colon here denotes that whatever is coming after this line is another code block. So this is another code block, but this code block depends on this, which simply means that this condition have to be satisfied before it will get to this one. If I change this to 5, which we know that sperm amount is less than 5, that means this statement is not true. And we run it, you see that it actually prints this 0 and then the spam times 4, but it does not print I do not want any spam. This has been totally ignored. It has jumped over this code block because this condition is not true. Don't worry, we get to conditionals later. So this is a group of things, a group of statements that work as a unit. Let me say it like that. So if I come down and I'm to print, let me copy one of these. How are you doing? Since all of these are starting on the same line, they are one code block. Okay, I can go ahead and then add another block and then say if it's you see that as I press enter, it automatically jumps or creates an index from this position. Okay, so let me say if I run this, still it gives me the same value, that is this, and then this being output to the screen because this code block is not being reached. If I move this and let me change this to 4, this is a conditional statement that has this code block inside. This is another conditional statement that has this code block inside. So even if this one is false, at the end of this if statement, it will jump back to the first line over here and execute that statement too. If this one is false, it's also going to jump back to this first line here. Okay, so let me run it again, and you can see 0 as the spam amount, and then since this is false, it is jumped. Now it comes to this, and then it says since spam amount is equal to 4, we get I'm doing good as the statement here. Afterwards, it jumps to this code block and then it executes this. So Python works with indentation, like indent, or basically spaces, and it should be consistent throughout. If you use, let's say, 4 spaces here, and you come to use 2 spaces here, you are going to get an error. So the best thing is you can use tabs, the tab key on your keyboard to create an indent. If you don't want that, you can just use 4 spaces on your keyboard, or you can just use 2. Just know that whichever indent you are going to use should be consistent throughout your entire file or your entire code. Okay, that was just by the way. Let's jump ahead, go to this arithmetic operations here. So we know integers, they are whole numbers, just that. And integers are basically positive or negative numbers. We are done with integers. We know floats. Floats are decimals, or the full name is floating point number. So a float is any number with, let's say, a decimal point. Now, floats are bigger than integers. So a float or a decimal can be a negative or a positive number, but it can also have decimal places. Okay. So you should know that 19.95 as a float is greater. What am I even saying? So floats can either be negative or positive, but they have uh, decimal places. Integers do not have decimal places, but they can also be positive and then negative. It's just as simple as that. If you divide any two integers, you are going to get a float. If you multiply any two integers, you are going to get an integer. If you multiply an integer by a float, you are going to get a float. So let's say x is equal to 25, y is equal to 3.0. If I say print x times, where is that one? Y, the value is a float, it has a decimal. Okay. If you multiply an integer and an integer, you get a whole number. Okay. That is an integer. If you divide, let me just use 5. If you divide an integer by an integer, you get a float. If you divide an integer by a float, you get a float. So anything with division, just know you are going to get a float. Okay. So this is a basic explanation. A natural thing for you to do with numbers is to perform arithmetic. So we have addition, subtraction, multiplication, true division, the one that comes with a decimal, and then floor division. It removes the decimal point, okay, or the fractional part. So if I do this, and then I run, sorry, oh, let me use 4. So if I do this and I run, it gives me 6. Okay, it gives me 6. But then if I did this, it was going to give me 6.25. So if I use the double forward slash, which is the floor division, this does away with the decimals or the floating numbers. We just return the whole number if we do this. Okay. We have the modulos. I think we know what modulos are. So please also, before I don't confuse modulos with floor divisions. Now, modulo returns only the remainder. So 4 modulo 25 modulo 4 is, how many times are 25 goes into 4? 4 goes into 25. 4 is 24. So remainder 1. So if I run this, 18. Oh, sorry. So modulo, sorry, percentage. So if I run this, I get 1. Okay. So 25 divided by 4 is 6, remainder 1. So the remainder is what we are looking at. That's what we want. If I do 26 modulo 4, we get 2. That is 6 whole number, but I'm not good at it. Okay. And then we look at exponentiation. That is exponent, right? So if I do 24 raised to the power, sorry, 26 raised to the power 4, I don't even know, some huge numbers. Okay, let me just break it down. 2 raised to the power 4 should be what? 32. Hey, 16. Sorry. Okay, so this is exponentiation. Yeah. Okay. And then negation. So just put a negative sign in front of the number and you get a negative number. That's just basic math. We've seen this, we've seen board math. So let's take an example. Which example are we going to take? Okay, let's just run this. What are they even looking at? So how tall am I in meters when I'm wearing a hat? If the hat is 25 centimeters, that's hat height in centimeters 25, and then my height in centimeters 190. So to calculate how tall I am, I'm going to add the height of the hat to my height, and then divide by 100, right? Because 100 centimeters make 1 meter. So this is just outputting the result in meters. So here it says height in meters is equal to total height in meters, comma, hey, sorry, question mark. So height in meters is equal to 26.9. If you do away with this, it will just give us the result in centimeters. Oh, rather, which is 215 centimeters. So it's basically adding this to this. I really wanted us to look at this, but okay. So we have built-in functions that we are going to look at. So let's look at this too. What's the time? 35. Okay. So built-in functions. You don't have to manually code everything using conditionals or loops or whatever. Sometimes there are some functions that already comes in the programming language that helps you work faster. Now, the mean returns the minimum number amongst a list of numbers. The maximum returns the biggest number, okay, in a list of numbers. So if you look at this, which one is the minimum in the first one? It is 1. And then the maximum number here is 3. So if you run this code, you get 1 and 3 to be the minimum and then the maximum. Let's see. Sorry. Oh, what did I do? So we have the smallest number to be 1 and then the biggest number to be 3. So we have the mean and then the max, right? Okay, this even work. No, can do. Okay, we have absolute. So absolute returns any number in a a positive number. So it just takes out any sign attached to the number. If it is a negative, it becomes a positive. That's all that is that. So if you look over here, we have absolute 32, it prints 32. We have absolute negative 32, which also prints 32. Okay, we've seen that we have two main, there are others, two main data types, sorry, numerical data types we can work with. That is the integer, int, let me just use int, and then float. We have int and float. Let's say they are the two main numerical data. We can work it now. Now, if I have a variable called cars and I say 25, and later I want cars to be a float to print cars, it gives me 20. Oh, what do I do? Oh, sorry. So am I doing this right? Am I doing this right? Hey, I can't. Why can't I print? Oh, sorry. Car. So if I have car to be 25, I print car. It is an integer. But if I want to convert car to a float, I can just surround this with a float. And when I run this code, E, number 3. If I run this code, you see car becomes a float. Okay. Same thing, we can convert um we can convert a float to an integer. And to do that, we also have to surround this with an int to denote that we are changing it to an integer. And when we run this, it takes away the decimal and then runs it to uh, a whole number. Let me just use 27. So a whole number. If it was 25, 27.5, it's still 27. But if it is 27.6, it's good. Hey, wow. So it just takes the whole number part. Okay. Unless we are rounding it, we are not rounding it. It just do away with the decimal part and then it returns the whole number. Yeah. Okay. So that is basically for this introduction. We are going to be looking at we are not going to do exercise. So I'm going to leave. Hey, what is this? I'm going to leave these exercises for you, or I go through them. What do I do? Okay, so I'm going to pause here and then ask if you have any questions or any clarifications before I continue.
Yeah, so it's question and answer time. If you happen to have any questions up until this point in the program, kindly ask your questions now so they can be clarified and then we move on.
Any questions, please?
So I think silence means consent, so it means we should move on.
Okay. Let me go back and we'll go back again. Functions. Okay. So while we were working, you saw me use a function or some functions which includes the print statement is an inbuilt function, the max and then the mean are inbuilt functions. We have this float taking the bracket is an inbuilt function, This int is an inbuilt function. I'm going to delete the nodes and I'm going to start. Oh, I can't delete this. Okay. So we are looking at functions. I think functions are a bit ahead. You're supposed to look at, so let's look at list before we look at functions. We've seen variables, so ideally the next thing we should look at is list. So I said last time that um, creating variables takes space, right? And sometimes you're going to need like a lot of variables to store the same data type and use it somewhere in the code. But if these variables or this data that we are storing are related, the best way to store them is in a list. In Python, just like any variable, we create a list of items of a data type. So I can say cars, or let me use fav cars. This is how we create a list. The name of the list, which is the same as how we create a variable, the assignment operator, and then this square bracket, which simply means that we are going to have a list of items. Now, my favorite cars, the first one on the list is Tesla. The second one is, let me just use single quotation, Audi. This is how they spell it. Infinity and I can't quite find anything. Let me just put Benz there. Okay, so let's look at this. This is a list. Initially, what we would have done is fav car 1 is equal to Tesla, fav car 2 is equal to Audi, fav car 3 is equal to infinity. Is that let me just put it, okay, infinity. And then fav car 4 is equal to Benz. I don't really like Benz. Okay, so without the list, this is how we are going to do that. And you can see that we are typing plenty. All of these are the same data type. They are all strings, right? So if I want to have, or I want to deal with my second favorite car, I'll say favorite car 2, right? And then it will print onto the screen. So I'll say my favorite car is comma, and it prints my favorite car is Audi. Then we've created all these variables, which is not ideal since they are all strings and they are all cars we are talking about here. The best thing we can do is to store them as a list. Okay, so we know that we are talking of a list of cars. Now that we have this, how do I get my first car, which is Tesla? So let's do this. If I print this, I get all of the cars. I don't want that. I just want Tesla. There's this thing about lists. Lists, sorry, items in a list are indexed. Oh, list indices start from 0. Okay, there are 4 items in this list, but when we are getting the items themselves, we use what we call indexes. Okay, so the index is the position of an item in the list. This is the first item, this is the second, the third, and then the fourth. So first, no, second, third, fourth. So these are 4 items. When I want to get the first item from the list, I use the index. In a list, indexes start from 0. So if we look over here, the index of Tesla is 0, index of Audi is 1, index of Infinity is 2, and that of Benz is 3. So we start from 0, 1, 2, 3. I don't know what they are called, whether natural numbers or counting numbers or whatever. But then in list, they are positioned starting from 0. Okay. So the first item has an index of 0. The second item has an index of 1. The third item has an index of 2. And the fourth one has an index of 3. Basically, if it was series and sequence in math, you say x is equal to n minus 1, and where n is the position of the item. Okay, so n minus 1. So if you are looking at the first one, which is the position, then 1 minus 1, which will give us 0. So that's the first item. 2 minus 1 will give us this. 4 minus 1 will give us this. So now, if I want to get car 1, which is Tesla, I'll say what favorite cars. Can someone guess? If I want to get Tesla, which index am I using?
0.
Good. Thank you. So now, when I run this code by putting 0 in this square bracket, we know that the square bracket means we are dealing with a list. So it simply means that from this list of favorite cars, pick the one with the index of 0, or pick the first item. So in here, we get my favorite car is Tesla. What about if I want Benz? Which index do I get? Which index do I use to get Benz?
3. Index 3.
3. Okay, I think we get it. Good. Now, sometimes we are going to have a very long list that we might not even know the number of items in the list. Maybe I have, let's say, B, sorry, BMW. I have Ford. I have Ferrari as part of this list. I'm not even adding the index. If you want to get the last item of the list, what do you think it will be? I wouldn't know. Let's say you are told that there's a list of cars. They don't know the exact number. How are you going to get the last item? So in Python, one way, the first way, which is not really ideal, is using the len, Len. So the len, which simply means length. returns the number of items in a container. So if I say len into brackets, fav cars, it's simply going to tell me the number of items in favorite cars. So I'll say num of cars. Since I can't tell the number of cars in beforehand, I don't know. So if I do number of cars is equal to len favorite cars, which is this, it is going to tell me the number of items in this list. So I can put num of cars here. But the issue is that, let me hold on for this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 7 items. So this will get an index. The last one will get an index of 6. If I mistakenly put 7 over there, what we get is catastrophic. We get an error. The name of the error says index error, and the description is index out of range or less index out of range. This simply means that the indices here 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you continue, you will reach 6, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's no 7 here, even though there are 7 items. We don't have a 7th index. So if you put 7 there, you get an error. Okay. Simply because this is our formula once again. X is equal to n minus 1. So 7 minus 1, that is 6. So 6 should be our last index. If I go ahead and put 17 over there, we will still get the same error, okay, which is less index out of range. So that's just by the way. So always follow n minus 1. So to get the number of cars, we have, so I'm coming back to this, right? So we have num of cars. If we print this, definitely we are going to get an error because number of cars index out of range. Where is it? Okay, they didn't state it. So this is pointing to where the error is, right? And this is highlighted as in this statement is where the error is coming from. So index out of range. Now, what we have to do to get the last item in this list is to do what? N minus 1. So it simply means that we are subtracting 1 from the total items, following this formula to give us the last item. So when we print this, it gives us my favorite, oh, it's not K. My favorite car is Ferrari, which is the last items. Now, defining a variable to come and reference it in here is just another piece of writing. I hate typing. So to prevent us from doing all this is the reason why they brought lists, right? So we type less. That is one thing about Python. Type less, achieve more. Okay. So since this is redundant, is this even correct? To get the last item of the list, we use only the minus 1, which simply means that get the list, get the number of items in favorite car, and then start from the last end. So this has an index of -1. This has an index of -2. This has an index of -3, -4, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, -7. Let me go over again. When we are printing or when we are indexing lists, we start from the first one to the last one. If you don't know the number of items in the list, but we want to get an item from the bottom, we start by indexing the bottom upwards. And indexing the bottom upwards, we don't start from 0, we start from -1. So starting from -1 is going to give us the last item, which is Ferrari. If I do -2, we are going to get Ford, right? If I do -4, you're going to get, is it Benz? Okay. So using negative index, no, negative index starts from the back of the list. So to get items from the back of the list, we start by counting with a negative number from the back. Okay. So that is one of the simple operations we can do with a list. We can print multiple items, we can add multiple items, we can do multiplication if there are numbers. So for example, if we have, let's say, scores is equal to 72, 13, 25, 80. So if I print scores -4, we get 25. That means we are counting from the back. Now, we can do mathematical operations with this, like score 1 plus score scores 3. And when we do this, we are basically adding 13 plus a score 1, 13 plus with 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, 99. Okay. Yeah, that's it. 13 plus 99, which is going to give us 112. Right. So this is basic addition and subtraction. So we can work with lists just as how we work with any variables, right? Okay. So I'm not going to look at functions. I'm still looking at lists. Okay. So that's list. We also have multi-dimensional list. Multi-dimensional. What am I typing? Or we can have vectors, we can have matrices. Yeah, matrix. So we are moving ahead. Programming is math, so just bear with me. So let's look at this. Oh, okay, let me leave the comment. So this is basically a matrix, right? Or this is a multi-dimensional array or a list. So another name for a list is an array. So this is a multi-dimensional. This simply means that the list contains another list inside. I think this can be confused. Okay, let me look at it like this. So this here looks like matrix. I think we have all seen matrix before. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 3 by 3 matrix. Don't worry, don't be afraid. This is how it is written. So as it is, it could also, I could also have written this on one line, but it can get hard to read. Some find this one easier to read, others find this one easier to read. The most important thing is that Hands is a list. Inside hands, so this is a list too. It starts from here and then ends here. Inside hands, you can see there's one list, two, another list, and then another list. Okay, so let's look at it this way. Hands is the big list, the first one, just like this list. Okay, the big one, house and everything. Inside that, we have another list that starts from here and then ends here. That's the first item in the hands list, but that item itself is a list. We have this, which is another list and another list. So list inside list. So basic summary is main list with three child lists. I don't know where the child comes from, but yes, so three child lists. So the main list is hands, and then one, two, three list inside. How do we get this one? Honestly, if we do print hands 0, we can't get J like that because we can't get it like that because it's a list. Now, since we've seen that to access a list, you have to use the index. This list here has an index of 0. That is the entire list. This list here has an index of 1. This list here has an index of 2. I think I should move this upwards. So it's up here. So that's the entire list. Now, if you look at the list, let's look at the smaller list, right? The smaller list also have their indexes. So let me look at, let's use this. Let's use this. No. So index 0, index 1, don't want this, index 2 for this list. So if I print hands 0, I get JQK. That's the first index or the first item in the main hands list. Since this is also a list, we only want J, we don't want the entire list. How can we get J from this list? Please, can anyone take a guess to see if we understand? I think our time is even up. Hello. How do we get J from this list? I'm waiting for you. Okay. Since you don't want to talk, let me just wrap it up. So just like indexing it, we see this is 0, this is 1, and this is 2. And this same thing applies to the other list, right? So if you want to get the first item in this list, the list itself has an index of 0. The first item in it also have an index of 0. So to get A, we can do hands 0, 0, and this returns J. If you want A here, the index of this list is 2, but the index of A is 1. So we do 2, 1. Oh, this is 2. So 2 here and then 0, 1. Okay, for A. So we get 2, 1, and that should give us A. Okay. So basically, we use um, this. So the first one is the main list, and then the second one is the sub list or the child list inside the main list. Okay, I'll end here because our time. Okay, I get 2 minutes. Yeah, so basically that's about list. We can also do any operation with any variable operations like adding or multiplying, concatenating, whatever with the list, just like we do with variables. So I would end here and then I'll ask if there are any questions. Am I still on?
You are
Please, are
still
there any
on.
questions? Okay. So if there are no questions, then I would like to end here. So that will be the end of today's session. So as I said, we can go back to the first one, intro to programming, and complete all the lessons here. Okay. All right. So we will meet on Monday. I would
Yes, sir.
leave it to the host.
Okay, so I really want to thank you for the session. Although it was quite a lot to take in, I wouldn't say it wasn't worthwhile. I personally I learned a lot about the lists, the functions, the indexing of the lists, and conditional statements. Yeah, it was a lot to take in. I can understand if some of our audience are leaving whilst we are having this one, but I encourage us to try our hands on the assignments and then the practice sessions on Kaggle. They will really help us. Yes. So once again, Saikins, thank you very much. And also I want to thank our audience for sticking till the end of the session. Um, we look forward to the next session where we continue to learn and also do our assignments and exercises. Thank you very much. And that brings us to the end of the session for today.